Okay, so that my question variable is right now that is that now so right now in the because we personally feeling as a flag G can probably relate to like Gaara's like situation like this suffering a lot. So that definitely from like now perspective and from Naruto's point of view that Naruto would be what it was like a person. I'd like the certain situation would be totally to that comfort that person and to totally feel that can fix hand to that person and to bring about to ensure to that bring about that change to happen within that person. So I like that person can also experience like the life like exactly of and the freedom of like uh, and the joy of like kind of like that Naruto have in like the recently what like Naruto would be badly deserving. But like in like a personal situation from like Naruto's point of view, Naruto would only think that like really that's the only way in like Naruto's personal situation to like how to be able for Naruto to be able to like involve that change to happen with Gaara will be only to fight and for and defeat Gaara and then attempt to like speak sense to get along the lines like not going like a talking will be feeling and like that would be like the reason for like not for like or not for this work extreme disturbance by conflict in like because like in actuality like all Naruto want to do is be to like give that and that comfort and basically to like totally to comfort and basically to that two words to like talk to Java and like two words to like send out that thing to happen to Java and to that actually be like Naruto in like the person would be having most likely in his mind might be having that thing that and having that high priority to definitely to that be Java point to that even if it's so close to that by within Java definitely Naruto will be badly wanting to be like Java's that point so that like Java for the hands electrode like anymore would be one high priority for like another goal like it's definitely not projected to go definitely like so that this might be the reason like for like Naruto for hesitation and for disturbance coming to like a fight against that might be the case that even question that realization of like Naruto that like there's no other way but to like fight and defeat it's like already so suffering so much. Just like the only way to bring about the changes that I would. So that's according to my presentation, even right now, so with all these reasons that might be all different due to all this reason that having all this lactification coming into that in like the personality like fight and take down the reason for like now for also like strongly feeling the thing as like the last thing we would want right now would be working to that lose against like that would be also from that due to that from might be due to that from the point of view that Naruto would be the belief that like and like the ideology that makes Naruto through that Naruto's life the things that Naruto might have felt that he has learned as for like what had resulted in that Naruto's life as like how it was in like the past where Naruto was that for alone had only Naruto's and and that Naruto's life changing from that to that present situation of like Naruto was like Naruto like totally absolutely full of joy that has been like Sakura Sasuke and like the other friends of like Naruto as well. So that the player ultimately doesn't do from that and the perspective believe that and our course that strong belief that will be that causing Naruto to feel that definitely Naruto that like elected the person is like far way better than like the life of like suffering that like Naruto had to elect the past like they believe so that Naruto in like the present like they believe that the current fight against the Gaara uh, that losing to that Gaara would be that the last thing Naruto wants because that from Naruto's perspective would be that not only believe that like would be not here something in that Gaara having to like continue on living his life through that suffering. But so like the film of the impressions were like what they were creating that the person like Naruto's like series to the like what Naruto did it was like that absolute truth. And basically that like the life that Naruto lives in like the person is like far more of like a very much different far more of joy to like Naruto's life when compared to like the life of like loneliness and suffering that Naruto had lived in like the past. So like this belief of Naruto like from Naruto's perspective like right now like that person fight against like Gaara Naruto loses into like Gaara with totally mean from like Naruto's perspective that is Naruto will be betraying all that beliefs of like Naruto and will be forced to like that belief of Naruto which like from within Naruto would be providing Naruto with that absolute joy like basically and would be feeling so right with for like Naruto being forced to like Naruto loses to like like fight like Naruto be forced to like betray all that belief of Naruto and be forced to like totally like accept like Gaara's like ideology and basically that and that would be like the last thing Naruto would be wanting that wouldn't just be about like Gaara, it's like Naruto loses to Gaara. Gaara would have to like the situation of Gaara where like Gaara would have to like keep continuing on with like Gaara's life of like suffering and loneliness, but that on top of that, like it will be also due to that from Naruto's perspective, Naruto versus to Gaara right now. Naruto being forced to like accept like Gaara's like ideology. It's like within Naruto would be Naruto be absolutely different. It's not the case. It's not the truth. That league might be so like that strong feeling of that belief within that Naruto would be what was the thing in that Naruto. And like the feeling as like the last thing Naruto would be wanting would be definitely to to lose to like Gaara would be that it's like the last thing Naruto wants like Naruto feeling strongly about it in that way. Even while having the hesitation of like basically fighting against like Gaara would be might be due to like all the reasons, especially my sense and also like with the revolution that like from like Naruto's perspective, Naruto might be saying that it will be having a different and fighting battles with like the soul intent to that perfect so different that would be so might be totally creating like that to need extreme need and desire to like get stronger and basically win like the battle that is far outweighing like the need to get stronger and like and then that could be that might be just getting created in someone like Gaara, who was like battling, who's like battling for himself to for his own benefit. Will be along the lines of that absolute belief as well. Would be that would Naruto would have it. So like believe that as well to like instill that whole belief of like Naruto into that and to make to have that change happen to that by having Naruto more at all to lose to that into battle might be also one thing that in like the present by Naruto like fighting away Gaara which is strongly present in like Naruto's mind and would be that as well might be another reason for like Naruto that really strongly not at all wanting to like look to that Gaara at all. It's also like about to that range. Also, the names still begin in my put emphasis on that. Even with that, and our like the person that need not so strongly not at all body to like lose against that are still able to bring that without necessarily like that lead. Even in that Gaara's like preference form itself, like in that Gaara literally totally for and indicating and sidelining. And it's like the scenario that I'm looking for. And at that point, and then definitely bring at that point, like even about to that, isn't it now? But like at that very last second, it's when I'm doing like the Orochimaru transformation on that Sasuke will be finally coming complete. And like basically at that point, like Sasuke once again having that complete personality change into that whole winning stick manner. And basically at that point, when I was playing like the Orochimaru power plus Sasuke versus like Gaara fight happening at which would be like resulting in like Gaara taking a lot of injury from like Sasuke's like or strength like that. So there's like the scenario that I'm thinking onto and like that probably will be what like that which I'm resulting in like Gaara being pushed to his like limits and like which would be resulting in like that strength spirit like eventually retaliating back by like finally being able to like access its like ultimate giant through giant spirit modes of form with like the scenarios that I was saying. And at that point, when I was saying like once again, like the light of like the battle will be heavily at that point, really on like the fate happening on like the favor of Gaara. It's like the scenario that I was saying. And with that, Gaara probably eventually for and defeating Sasuke, and as like Gaara would be about to like eliminate Sasuke's so at like that very last second that I'm going to bring like Naruto would be like finally succeeding. It's not for to be only at that point that like Naruto will finally succeeding in like successfully summoning this like chief Gamabunta to like the scenario that I'm doing. And I'm just saying like we'll be definitely with like the giant chief Gamabunta to like that I'm doing like that final attack of like the giant monster sunspit form of like Gaara as it will be able to like take out Sasuke that getting stopped by like the giant damage that or Naruto is like Naruto sitting on top of that giant chief the movie or at that point is like being the scenario that is like on this thing. And my brain and that competition for it will be only at that point that like the actual pro battle between that Gaara and Naruto will be that happening will be begin only at that point. Also like being the scenario that is in only taken by the so like definitely my question to range right now is definitely for like a lot of regardless of like what our like ninja techniques and attacks that Naruto is using that number like Naruto not at all even being able to like to not even a single damage at all to like Gaara until like the point where like Naruto eventually find a successfully summoning like Gamabunta or like until that point like no matter that whatever like ninja fighting techniques that Naruto do using to fight off against like Gaara and to all that techniques like not even causing like a single damage at all. In like Gaara is like the scenario that so like the person challenge on the attack of that Naruto that will be probably easily would be getting destroyed by Gaara. If that the scenario that I'm thinking about today. Because like a fundamental frame can totally protect like even to that the person like basically that very same blue chakra flowing with the Naruto. It's like exactly like the majority like have like the blue chakra like in Naruto state like even in like the person like the blue chakra would be might be totally extremely weak and might be totally lacking that up with strength to even cause even like the amount of bit of like any sort of damage to that even though the person might be like that, the different situation the believer so that don't protecting like things like Naruto, they don't have this like in like the person have this they didn't have this like extra special for a chakra like so still they can remember anything like it will be only one like download Naruto later on in like the battle that would be fundamental to summoning fully summoning like cheat download Naruto like it will be only at that point that I'm like Sharat chakra would be like Naruto would be able to like once again unleash that Sharat chakra to flop not only through like the Gamabunta tone but also through Naruto as well. So definitely my friend. So like that way along with like the Gamabunta tone at that point like Naruto as well is a like also in manner like it was like sentence. We also like a documentary of the current book. So like I'm doing like it at present like the situation of Naruto would be that like at present like Naruto like Lucha out might be totally so extremely weak that like it won't be able to like even face Gaara like any attack with like mobile Naruto you're relying on like losing that blue chakra won't be at all even be able might not be able to like even create extra amount of bit of damage so to like but to be only that with like the red chakra alone that Naruto like would be even able to like cause any sort of damage at all to Gaara at like Gaara like the level of like might be like that is definitely my consideration with the right now. Also, the Klima secondary expression by now that it might be only that the intermediate transform form of that lava of that well fixed form error that might possess like the same. So also like about the final fully transformed like giant fixed form of the something might not even have a same like once like I don't think sensitive will be elaborating until finally unleashing that final giant sunset monster form. And at that point, I'm looking at the same like that form was not having a tail and that way that weakness on like the base of like the tail that like was like sensitive form have would be not present at that final giant sensitive transform form of like Gaara. Once eventually Gaara reaches that form is like during the scenario that is like him of like for that form that's the only weakness of the would be just that what and what they choose to attack they don't is definitely my personal impression. So so that's definitely still the remember the represent for like even today definitely for that like complete or a scenario transformation of like something happening something great delay. It's like the scenario that and at that point I'm sitting them and definitely for like also like not only the power of the but like of that not power that of getting but also that like once again that personality as well in the like the realistic stuff here that's happening at that point. It's definitely my bigger scenario that they don't. So definitely at that point I'm probably getting that the very same stuff here right now. That Naruto to that perfect Sakura that I'm doing that very same stuff here at that point that while fighting off focusing only on the like will be fighting off against like I'm protecting at that point like see like the within stick way in which like the flip up at that point will be probably straight away for it Gara and will be in like an extremely realistic manner to be like fighting against Gara like within other direction. So like definitely instantly I'm going like Sakura and at that point definitely that way like Sakura would be free from like Gara itself. It's like within other direction. Yeah, like Sakura would be extremely worried for like okay. Because like Sakura is like Sakura so already witness like that 15 personality for like okay happening to like an extremely realistic manner once like the mark fully take over like Sakura. So laptop around extremely worried so like okay and like at that point I'm like slowly trying like Sakura trying to like calm down so okay and like bring Sasuke back to his like normal self. Uh but like at that point I'm whispering this very same Sasuke who is right now telling Naruto to like protect Sakura would be at that point would be like attacking Sakura and like badly injuring like Sakura will be getting badly injured at that point with like the scenario that so like that whispering would be like an absolute extreme shock for like Naruto. It's like such individual scenarios what I'm going to like. Naruto at that point being absolutely troubled. Like even at that point, I'm just going to scenario being like Naruto not realizing what's going on with like Sasuke. It's like the scenario that I'm just Naruto until that point would be also think that like Sasuke maybe due to like Sasuke being training with like Kakashi that Sasuke finally has able to that bring out like more might have got some sort of like an even more like might have been able to like unlock and bring out even more of like power and this with that like Sasuke was like fighting back entirely for and Gaara at that point. Would be along the lines like Naruto would be like nailed and in the late stage at that point while Sasuke would be attacking Sakura. So just trying to get in like Sasuke's way and like countdown Sasuke that this like the scenario that is and that incident I'm referring that would be thoroughly bring about that absolute shock to the next episode. Like seeing Sasuke attack Sakura would be that absolute shock for like Naruto. And it would be only at that point that like Naruto would be like even slowly starting to like realizing that there is something is like something wrong with like Sasuke. Is like doing the scenario that I'm about to go into. So like that even attention right now that is even with like some operating on subject like the fact that like subject even to like the person is lack of being able to like hold on to the like access personality might be solely due to like the what remaining power that subject will be having like chakra and all that like that subject will be having like a lot of like a huge portion of that chakra like remaining chakra of like subject which might get okay offering on this lack build and that might be the reason for that even with like to a great extent like what is Maru's mark like something having happened to like Sasuke like still Sasuke like personality alone was still not until this point like not having taken that shift might be due to like Sasuke holding on to his like will and allowing a lot of his like remaining chakras to lack holding on to that to powering up his like will to like totally to keep preventing from like the mark of Orochimaru taking over his like from changing his like personality as well. Might be the case definitely not so like definitely like Sasuke right now about the fight against like Chara definitely I'm looking like while I'm looking it to be more like right now it's like Sasuke would be like attacking Gaara that I'm looking like definitely I'm looking like the person like with like Sasuke repeatedly using like Chidori like not much Chakra would be left within like Sasuke to like actually fight and be able to like properly do any sort of like damage to that to Gaara at all in like the person might be the case definitely my friends so like definitely I'm looking for like the scenario being made like Sasuke right now that I can think maybe one more episode or it's like one possibility that I'm like, more like I'm out there right now trying to like basically once again trying to like while trying to like fight up against Dara like okay like attempting some sort of like a different attack which will be like probably what maybe like the part of the thing to or like some sort of like another possible to like okay it's like maybe Kakashi might have this might be totally unrevealed in this like Kakashi might have also taught Sasuke along with like the story during like Kakashi's like private training with like Sasuke might be also the demon in that as well like Kakashi might have warned Sasuke to like only use in case of like extreme emergency alone. Just like the other that I'm definitely able to like for the scenario being like right now because like Sasuke like about the fight up against like the current fight and like Gaara's like attacks from me or for example, and like Sasuke, one of like Sasuke attack with like Sasuke would be using which is like thoroughly depleting away like all the chakra of like all of like Sasuke's own blade chakra like with scenario for another right. And at that point, like Gaara would be about to like eliminate Sasuke like the Naruto therapist. So like at that very last second, like while Sasuke is thoroughly depleted of that, then that goes with that flow chakra. At that point, I'm like Sasuke not having any of the chakra to like strengthen up his left will, and that way like Sasuke loses his left will, which would be like keeping him protected from like from taking over like fully taking over Sasuke, like Sasuke Sasuke's personality as well as relating over to body. So like that point is what I'm looking one like Sasuke's the chakra will be fully depleted away. And that point is when I'm looking like Orochimaru, like the chakra contained within like Orochimaru, like fully taking over like Sasuke. And I'm looking it to be from that point on time, like Sasuke once again will be having not only that like power there of like, the mask, but also having that villain personality shift as well. Something is like the scenario that I'm looking at. Oh, so that definitely my was very impression that I'm sitting on this particular that like it might be solely due to that Naruto's like extreme naiveness and immaturity that like Naruto even to the present believing and even saying that like Gaara having gone through like the same loneliness and like sadness that Naruto has gone through in his life that gives me even while in like the past like what Gaara has like what Gaara revealed to Naruto that basically that I think like in like the past like Gaara I think like having revealed to like Naruto about basically Gaara's that about like the Karthika day having multiple times like attempted to like eliminate Gaara. That basically such extreme situation which like Naruto had never had to like that take that fact or that information that Gaara has already revealed in like the past like Naruto. That fact that like Naruto has like in like the person has shown me might have definitely shown me for that such extreme situations that which like Naruto has never gone through in his life just like Gaara has got. And yet, it might be due to that now for forgetting about that, and like it might be due to that now for like overall that now for like immaturity as well as naivety that basically not going like the person when they and say that basically Gaara has gone through like the same sadness and loneliness that Naruto have gone through. While and that Gaara represents that resembles like Naruto and everything when in actuality like it would be like that it would be like Naruto's nameless, like not being able to like make Naruto realize how much of like even worse of an extreme situation that Gaara had gone through, and compared to that the sufferings that like Naruto had gone through in his life. That might be the name that live on the since like the fourth Hokage has never attempted to like eliminate that Naruto, but that Gaara has already revealed that the Katsuhage has like on multiple occasions have attempted to multiple times have attempted to like eliminate Gaara, and if he Gaara having revealed this to like Naruto and still Naruto even to the person like even falling and saying that Gaara's like sadness as like the same sadness of like Naruto. It might be that the extreme extent of that and Naruto's like extreme lightness and immaturity might be the case that we want. Okay, so like me, my book the impression right now that is it might be totally due to that extra special red chakra that like Naruto alone Toba have revealed to that mother. Thoroughly supporting that the blue chakra of like Naruto might be the sole reason for like Naruto like while like relying on this like blue chakra being able to like create like so many great number of like shadow because like blue chakra that even being possible for like Naruto might be solely due to that extra special red chakra always like supporting like the flow chakra and nervous body might be the case that we might consider. Yet, like I'm specific in my representation that eventually it doesn't mean that Naruto will be ending up being forced into like such a situation where like Naruto's that soul chakra will be suddenly getting depleted. And at that point, that definitely under the point that it will be through that Naruto accessing this lateral chakra alone that and the Naruto will be even able to like cause any sort of serious damage to that like just eventually in the battle and even being able to like defeat like the player during Naruto eventually if or defeating like the chances for Gaara. But like that only even being possible for like Naruto only through Naruto's like thorough land forms of like red chakra and of that extra special red chakra of like the night boss alone is like the middle scenario that happens right like with like the blue chakra that's the able to bring like Naruto not being able to like defeat Gaara at all. It's like the middle scenario that happens for you and okay. Okay, so like definitely my consider embarrassing right now. It's definitely for like such definitely not being able to like get himself a coach runs regardless of like Naruto even telling some kid to because like instantly in my friend with like Naruto like blue chakra regardless of like what attacks like Naruto be using against like Gaara eventually, like I'm just like the situation eventually ending up in like Gaara's favor itself once again. It's like the new scenario that I'm saying. Gaara will be thoroughly offering and be able to eliminate Naruto. And like at that will last again definitely like Sasuke would be until that point would be taking his like different won't be able to like continue like listening to like Naruto and keep continuing his like good because like at that point like I'm the friend that we like the reality ending up being such a situation where like Naruto's clothes are Charlie getting crushed and destroyed. The power of Black Naruto proof that two Chakra Charlie getting powered and destroyed by Gaara and Gaara would be allowed to eliminate Naruto. So like at that point, like Sasuke, until that point, Sasuke would be taking that push rush like not being able to like continue listening to like Naruto. And Sasuke being forced to like step in and like uses like Chidori once again to like protect Naruto from getting eliminated by Gaara. And the second most likely as like Sasuke would be like eliminated like remaining all of the like remaining chakra into the like Chidori. At that point when I'm like Sasuke's chakra fully getting depleted and like that way like Sasuke will weakening and that way like Sasuke along with like the power upgrade like Orochimaru like Mark chakra like taking over like Sasuke and like along with like the Orochimaru Mark chakra power upgrade like Sasuke getting like Sasuke's personality as well instantly turning into like the personality. It's like 17 scenario that I'm going to tell you about it. And so like definitely I'm different like regardless of what like Naruto might be believing in like the person that like he has like thoroughly everything has thoroughly got everything under control and Sasuke is like still Sasuke not being able to like arrest at all and like Naruto completely ending up messing up in his like current fight against like Gaara while relying on like Naruto because Gaara is like sitting on the game. So like according to my friend, both bring that the point where like Naruto's own original blue chakra will be ending up like going to be like weak up that like Gaara's like strength. Uh, and the strength was like at that point happening while eventually Gaara would be like taking his like transformation to like the next stage of like basically having like Gaara's legs as well. And legs alone, which I think right now is like not having transformed into like the sense transformation like to bring like the next phase of like Gaara's like sense transformation would be exactly that and Gaara's like leg as well transforming into like the form of like the sense. Yet like even at that point, I'm bringing Gaara would be in that not in the giant form of like the giant sense form, but like in that mini version of that giant sense form, it's like the scenario that I'm doing. Yes, even in that form of that Gaara, itself like I'm doing like the massive power create happening to the Gaara once like Gaara's legs as well will be transforming into like the form of the giant the form of like the sense like the scenario that I'm doing. And with that power, I don't like I'm bringing Gaara or like crushing and destroying like Naruto's like chakra power and defeating Naruto's like the scenario that I'm doing. And after that, like I'm doing like the very next eventual next phase of the Gaara's like transformation would be like Gaara's like final ultimate fully transformed form of like the giant Sanskrit transformed form, which probably still in my differential will be only happening while during like the fight between like Satya versus like Gaara, where like Satya would be fighting with like that realistic personality with the Marco and power of like original Marcus, like in the scenario that I'm sitting on. So yeah, so like but we are still very demanding for them so that like for like Naruto to be able to like even create like so many extremely great number of like shadow forms using the shadow forms which could be that might be like totally something that like no ninja at all possessing like two chakra alone might be able to create. It's might be like that with institutions especially might be created so like and this might be one thing that Java might be actually aware of. Definitely also might be correct. And this might be the reason for like Gaara right now and the might have came through that's the conclusion that basically Naruto might probably have some sort of like the spirit contained within like Naruto that might be either providing Naruto with like a different kind of like chakra, which might be totally supporting like the process of like Naruto and making it possible for like Naruto to like totally thoroughly use of like the legend of Naruto and that way to be able to like still have the stamina to keep standing and moving while creating so many great number of like abnormally greater number of like chakras maybe along the lines like Gaara might have came down to the conclusion of that. Gaara might have came down to the conclusion of that being either such reason or like the other reason being that maybe that definitely Gaara will be assuming right now that they really Naruto would be having might be coming to the conclusion that Naruto will be probably having some sort of like a skit within like Naruto similar to like the sense that which might have either provided Naruto with like a support of like an extra chakra or like might have only boosted up like Naruto like due to like solely that presence of like that spirit within like Naruto it might not only boost up like nervous like flow chakra might have like raise up the levels of like nervous flow chakra to like abnormal level. That way, making it possible for like nervous to be able to create so many abnormally great like characters. Along the line, like might have came down to like the conclusion of like either these the possibilities would be along the line Gara would be in like the person everything definitely able to bring like unlike in Naruto's case, but Naruto has this like extra special a new red chakra to like in like Gara's case, like like Gara would be might be definitely not having that extreme levels of advantage that Naruto have. Where like in the case of like Gara, even when Gara as well have like the Sanskrit within the Gara like yet like like the Sanskrit might have only provided Gara with like only a ghost in that Gara's like low chakra already existing low chakra, might be the activity of sacrification with like Gara. Like the Sanskrit might have definitely not provided like unlike in Naruto's case, like the Sanskrit might have not given not being able to like, provide Gara with some extreme advantage of like providing an extra a totally different extra special red chakra or like any different color chakra to the Gara. That might be on in Gara case, it might be only like due to like the Sanskrit like Gara's own original flow chakra getting like an upgrade in that it's like 40 uh, might might be like that value of expedition, especially if my intelligence. But I think maybe that most likely that might be what like Gara might be right now assuming that like even more than like the presence of like an awfully different chakra, color chakra, like existing within like Naruto, like Gara might have never even heard of like such a different color chakra even existing with possibly being like exist within like other person. So like there are at present will be probably assuming most likely leaning most of the book like most likely assuming that like Naruto's like no chakra might be probably having like an added dose most likely due to like the presence of like spirits in the to like and spirit like cosmic things in the Naruto will be only along the lines of like Gaara will be assuming without realizing the extreme special extra chakra which advantage like Naruto have might be like that certain situation like expecting and this might be the reason for like right now like definitely more so wanting to like look at, against like Naruto at all costs like because like definitely like for Dara right now definitely it will be that much of like the priority for Gaara to like definitely ensure that like this like because like since like Gaara right now we're totally feeling that like Naruto might have like spirit like similar to like within like Naruto definitely for like Gaara it will be like a matter of like basically to of like for Gaara and like Sanskrit it will be probably a matter of like showing to them that they are that like they will be only feeling that they have met like the ultimate rival even more than Sasuke and Sasuke's eyes, like even more than that, like right now we like the person Dara and like Sasuke will be totally feeling us like they have met the ultimate rival to Naruto. Most likely to like the stuff like a similar fit within Naruto. So like right now we like the person like for Dara and like Sasuke will be that much of like an extreme top priority to like ensure that like Dara and Dara's like the power of Dara's Sanskrit is like to show that it's stronger than like Naruto and Naruto's like Sanskrit because like Dara right now we like the person would be feeling of like maybe having that feeling of like a realization kind of like a feeling would be what like Gara will be feeling right now. But like Gara in the person maybe only also feeling that maybe so with like the person like the spirit similar to the Gara sunset might exist within Gara and how then like so like Naruto might be like the very same as that of Gara. So like yet for like Naruto to totally have a different ideology that like totally opposite Gara ideology. So definitely with like everything Gara believes in like as to like basically like basically it was for like Gara fighting for himself and for his own benefit alone that has gotten Gara to like the level of strength that Gara is in like the person like that this might be Gara's like ideology. I think that the people that ideology would be feeling threatened and challenged by like Naruto since like Gara in the person would only think Naruto as like really same as Gara. So like yet for like Naruto to like have an ideology that like only supposes like Gara's ideology. Gara and the Sense would be only feeling threatened. So like they might be only feeling as a like as if like they definitely cannot afford to like lose against like Naruto because like if that happens like everything Gara and like Sense believes in even though the person like basically believed in for so long and even though the person like basically all that like Gara and example will be forced to like totally uh, accept that basically all that was wrong and that Naruto's ideology was right. If like Gara and Alexander loses to that Naruto in this current fight, which would be like the last thing that Gara and Alexander will be wanting at like person because like that will be like the only thing that they will be even having and the only thing that will be that they will be believing that keeps them going might be like also the case that we might be very competition right. Okay, so like nothing at the 300 right now that is the perfect giant sandpit form of the so ring might not be stronger than like that giant 300 snake that like basically rampaging through like the league laser right now, especially when and that giant 300 snake might be naturally might be like the top subordinate of that Orochimaru as well considered by the friends might not be human but like a but might be like the chief leader of snake in like the realm of like the snake in like the snake realm from which like Orochimaru in like the very long distance past might have been summoned to like the world of humans as like a summoning creature by someone maybe like by like the first or like second Hokage in like that December and like Orochimaru might have totally manipulated them at like some point or like either like the first or second Hokage or like it might be somebody else like that might have used like the summoning to like summon like the chief leader of like snakes from like the snakes realm and that might have been that snake might have been Orochimaru and like then like Orochimaru might have eventually managed to like only trick and manipulate its like master as like something creature of might and manipulate its master into like giving Orochimaru human form might have been what might have happened suddenly in so like back when like Orochimaru might have been in that for snake realm like this like exact giant three-headed snake might have been like the top subordinate of like the leader Orochimaru, the leader of snake Orochimaru might have been the case definitely so like according to my friend that Orochimaru might be truly like a summoning snake lead up in that human form that Gamabunta might be having like absolutely no sort of like compassion at all to that any human at all in that the world of like Naruto, and it might be like the case of middle. It might be only towards like the snake in like the snake realm of like Orochimaru, which like Orochimaru might have been included in that as like a leader in like the particularly might be only to all those snakes in like the snake realm alone that like Orochimaru might have any sort of like compassion or like might even have like the feeling as if like they are on his side after the same kind with the along the line like Orochimaru might be seeing things that limit pyramid. So like definitely like in like the person like in like the person like attack on like the village like Orochimaru might have decided to like totally get the help from like just like top subordinate from like the snake realms, and that might have been how that the three-headed snake giant snake might have been summoned. That giant three-headed snake probably while being a summoning creature might still not have like an actual master, might be also the case currently might be other than Orochimaru as like a hero might be like the actually definitely might be rare. So like the preemptions as well, like the snake that I think like Orochimaru had brought during like the first of that phase, second phase of like the June exam, like that snake which that giant snake which Orochimaru I think had brought, which did have like three heads, like I'm thinking that giant snake might have been one among like the other top subordinates of that in like the summoning snake real of like Orochimaru might just like Orochimaru at that point might have chosen decided to like summon to like the cost of the location during like the second phase of like the exam might have been what might have happened back then. Definitely might be clear. So like so the body might have mentioned something like that giant three-headed snake perhaps waiting through like the village at present might be far stronger than that Gaara's like just perfect form of like the giant sunset form. At like present still able to bring like eventually like definitely able to bring like up like Naruto definitely converting in the Gaara's like even Gaara's like giant sunset form. With like the help of like the seeds Gamabunta to like the scenario that everything. And after that, like I'm thinking like about change that serious like major change happening with like Gaara and his like character and like Gaara totally turning to like the side of the and everything is like the scenario that everything. And that way like I'm thinking like eventually the numbers for most likely maybe during like a war that might be taking place in like the distant future, like I'm something that and I'm wondering during that point I'm wondering like by then like Gara would be like definitely I'm wondering in like the present war on like the village from like eventually like the situation eventually ending up with like the Gara getting eliminated before like the war ends. It's like the scenario that I'm thinking. And that way like I'm spending up like the Gara getting elimination I'm sort of eventually still in America that like eventually work to be eventually Gara that would be that on having that for cap change and that turning to that side of food and everything that would be at that point Gara that would be becoming that thing uh taking up on like the new Katsuga position and becoming like the role of like the sand village from that point on stuff and that they are like in that the distant future I'm totally threatening a war. And in that war like is when I was like Gara like giant perfect sand spirit transformed form at that point, which will be that far way stronger than that with the present level. So which will be having like way superior level of strength than like the present level of strength of like like and form. That will be at that point in that war, in the middle of that war, would be facing off against like the three-headed snake. Uh, giant snake is like the scenario that we get. I'm just like it will be in that war in like the centuries of that. I'm just like in that fight really like Gara perfect giant sense for the form versus like the three-headed snake that I'm just like Gara would be totally finally offering and defeating and eliminating like that three-headed snake. Is that the scenario that I'm just and I'm just that alone might probably affect like Orochimaru because like definitely I'm just like Orochimaru that might definitely having compassion to his like snake alone in like the summoning snake alone in like snake so yeah alone might be because of like Orochimaru as well might originally be summoning snake creates something like in that box might be the use of snake and that probably so like I'm doing that way like and even the scenario where like Gaara would be offering and eliminating that particular snake at that point that act of like Gaara would be easily affecting and causing suffering and that feeling of it become what is like of like cracks and what is like get revenge on like and will be probably enraging much mother at that time. In that case, that kind of scenario that I'm supposed to like also my experience is of like unlike in Gara's case of like the transformation of like the giant perfect transformation of like the giant and like I'm wondering in also case I'm so like in that constant like I'm like not so ending up taking that whole mastery over of like control over like the mental for not of achieving that and September like Naruto eventually like this computer like learning something like a unique and powerful summoning tools which like I'm like Naruto being able to like summon out that nine tail fox split up into nine tail fox within like Naruto and like Naruto using that unique tool to being able to like summon it down and turning it into like a summoning creature like Naruto. And by then like I'm thinking Naruto would have like trained extra hard and easily might have like upgrade its strength to that region like its speed height levels as well. So that like I'm looking like even while doing that like I'm looking like the scenario would be like that's like the scenario that Naruto is leading up like fight battles while on top of like the giant nine tail fox by using like the giant nine tail fox that's like Naruto like summoning creature while Naruto would be also simultaneously, even while summoning out like transnight of Naruto, also being able to like have access to like the red chakra as well within Naruto as well. And would be for himself as well being able to like fight with like the red chakra along with like the blue chakra as well. While also being able to like fight alongside like the giant night box as well as like some creature as well. Here's that eventual distant future scenario of like the way but in which like the way I'm trying Naruto is fighting in battlefield like the very distant future. There's also my theory and function. So yes, so like definitely my think the question right now is that like the chief Gamabunta right now might be far bigger than that when like during like Jiraiya training that Naruto had like first for like the first time had like actually considered like summoning like the chief Gamabunta like the size of like the chief Gamabunta back then might be far smaller when compared to like the size of like the chief Gamabunta right now while facing off against like like giants and it might be solely due to that none of that desperate desire to like actually not at all at like all costs to like actually ensure that you don't lose to like Gaara. So like that might have presented in like this year right now that the chief coming control like the size of like the chief coming control of like Naruto like being almost like comparable to like the size of like the giant set spirit of like Gaara. Certainly might be the actual situation. Also, according to my temperature for defining like this might also be like the maximum size like another word that cheese Gamabun store might even be able to be at it's also like my particular mentioned like regardless of like Naruto's like chakra level like growing even more into like the super I'm still probably cutting for like Naruto not being able to like increase like the size of like the cheese Gamabun any more than it is at like percent while phase no that went almost at like the same size as that of Black Gara. I think that of Black Gara like 10 times before. Might be like also like that situation like definitely much request. Okay, so let's definitely my particular question right now is for like the giant chief Gamabunta to like right now that like take a massive leap of like a jump and basically like jumping a huge distance and basically a distance that like even like the giant sense form of like Gara won't be able to like catch up with this like the scenario that I'm in. So like that is what I'm considering right now to only happen because like I'm considering like the chief Gamabunta even though the person might want to like test Naruto further and might want to like feel as if like another is like deserving of like basically like of like basically because would be along the lines of different like the chief Naruto into the person would be totally feeling especially with like Naruto like addressing himself as like a henchman of like the chief Naruto like so definitely I'm looking from like chief Naruto's like point of view like she would only be willing to like fight uh only to take willing to like take the orders from someone he views as like a master and with like Naruto himself addressing himself as like the henchman of like these Naruto like the chief Gamabunta I'm only to be even more the point that seems like Naruto. And definitely would be right now planning on like definitely testing Naruto and where like Naruto will have to like process like through its work as like deserving to be like the master of like the piece Naruto and only at that point for like piece Naruto to even listen to like Naruto would be along the lines of the looking like the moment Naruto right now taking the decision just like the Naruto kind of that way like the chief Naruto right now so without my like taking that massive jump of like a lead and basically leaving like the battlefield just like that, just like the scenario that I was for it. And I was bring like after that massive leap of like a jump onto the like let's see the middle part of like would be like resting at like a location somewhere on the other end of like the lead village where like nearby I'm considering that to be the lake is also like talking to that I'm already right. So like Naruto be like at that point desperately like telling like the trying to like convince like the chief Gamabunta told us like how Stanley like approaches to like basically stop Gaara and basically how Naruto's like with his friends are like there but are there like basically Sasuke as well as like Sakura that Naruto has to like save and everything. But like the chief Gamabunta won't even bother to like and that way like Naruto of leaving there resulting in like uh, that into resulting in like Naruto deciding to like challenge that the chief Gamabunta to a one battle and basically that basically or like a different like the chief promotion part of himself like telling Naruto that basically Naruto can defeat him in like a one versus one battle. Then that he would listen to like Naruto. Like he would only listen to the master and not at his friend. In the end of the night, Naruto like he from Naruto that one telling to like a frustrate Naruto at that point like was Naruto and that way like I'm looking at a battle separate totally parallel battle even happening between like Naruto and the chief Naruto. Like the serious battle even happening as well like Naruto would be totally initially seriously Starlight struggling in that battle against Lag, easily getting overpowered and Starlight struggling in that battle against Lag, simply coming that on until eventually Lag Naruto, Lag will be desperate and Lag to definitely that desperation of Naruto to Lag and Lag then worry Lag Naruto connecting to Lag, Lag the well-being of Lag Sasuke as well as Lag Sakura. Who at that point the player was during while Naruto will be having this like parallel fight against like the Roman Saga on the other side like Gaara would be like the giant sense that form of Gaara would be really feeling as if like him deciding to like catch up towards like the Gamabunta or another later on because like they would have jumped so far and like at that point I'm looking like like the giant sense form of Gaara like he deciding to like instead focus on taking out like Sasuke for like the time being and then to like chase after like Naruto and I'm saying like the sense form of Gaara would be taken like with another side of the so that at that point I'm looking like the fight between like Sasuke and like the Gaara happening it's like the Zen Gaara happening at that point it's like scenario that happening and in that fight the different something creating it or like Sasuke losing all of his like chakra all of chakras of his chakra getting depleted and at that point like I'm sitting in the which is that like the power of like Orochimaru's mark that sort of thing Sasuke possesses that power and like his of his personality of turning into that villainous personality and that's the fight between that Sasuke villain to Sasuke was like the giant form of Gaara happening that and that intense fight and like initially when the Sasuke managing to like cause the connection of time with like government really like the giant form of like Gaara that like for Sasuke and from that point on, like even like the dynasty of able to probably like the power of like the master like Orochimaru, which is only for fraction of like the true extent of like Orochimaru's power. It's also definitely mandatory and like the full power of it is like Orochimaru and like Sasori will be fighting in like the person are fighting in like the person who is far greater than like even like the full power. Even then like far greater than the person full power of like the Jensen form of Black Star might be against the people and everything like that way like eventually the Jensen from suddenly one for and defeating the scan we hear about like illness of people and that way last second and Sakura will be totally shocked and it's feeling and Sakura maybe I'm looking like would be running towards like the badly defeated and injured Sasuke and standing in front of like Sasuke with her arms wide trying to like even though she would be knowing that way she would be able to like, protect Sasuke from like the foreign to be the attack powerful attack like of the example but from still I'm scenario to be like badly defeated Sasuke lying on the floor and like Sakura standing in front of like Sasuke with the wide lat and in coming lat extremely powerful attack from the sense form would be happening. And then that very last second I'm like Naruto along with like the chief from that whole like showing up and like the chief from that whole like stopping like the dance and perform attack with like it's like similar just like the scenario there. So like until that point what only something happening within between in that between that fight between like Naruto and like the chief from that one and only that battle I'm making eventually Naruto running his way into like eventually that separate desire to like something fix like for something in that map or finally succeeding in like accessing his like chakra and then looking like that way like now supporting himself with that powerful material of red chakra and with that red chakra is how like so on fighting back against like the chief that was literally or like the chief that was like the scenario that I was and I'm also putting that for the chief that on like thinking what might be that causing that healing might be having like healing effect from like the chief from that was before the healing for there as well. So like and that when I'm looking like the Siddha continent I'm talking about like the fight between like the chief from that one and that's happening. near to a lake, a huge lake, like like before like the chief Gamabunta told like after like Naruto will be defeated, like the chief Gamabunta told like the chief Gamabunta told accepting Naruto as his like master, and like before leaving like like the chief Gamabunta told like bringing that the majority of like the water from like that lake, and we'll be jumping back towards like the location of like the giant and hope like saving Sasuke and like Sakura. And then like the serious fight between that Naruto with like the chief that also like sense of like happening. In which like I'm saying like the chief that like would be not fully drinking on that water from like the lake. Like it is storing the great quantity of like that water. Again, it's like mouth and this need would be using that a water gun to like attack against like project eventually using that water as like water gun like attack against like resistance and the form of lava, which will be easily would be like super effective and that would be easily weaken that the ultimate sign powers of like the sentences of Gaara. And that is how I'm still reading the brain injury in so when I was like the Jansen. I don't like that I'm that almost in you are talking in the like the Jansen to the form of Gaara. Like in scenario that I'm looking over the brain. Okay, so like but yeah, I'm still thinking of my very interesting right now as for like not even like the giant soul of like the chief Gamabunta or nor like any other attacks that's like the chief Gamabunta that eventually like using against like the Jensen form of Gaara will be at all able to like only bring down like the Jensen form of Gaara. It's like the scenario that I'm sitting on and definitely I'm going to bring like eventually to that or getting family or by like the Jensen form of Gaara. And that is when number bring like finally that right now number bring like because only at that point that they find it the chief potato or like Naruto would be having the idea of like basically that using what to like from like a nearby lake to that use it as like a WhatsApp attack against like the chance and spit form of Gaara. And it could be only through such a manner that it could be only through figuring out such a strategy alone that still thinking about the frame itself was like Naruto element like Pero in that one would be finally able to like take it and bring them like the chance and spit form of Gaara. It's actually something on to him. Also, like the Lehman remuneration right now is that was not causing much of like damage at all to that the leash might be of like a high priority, even for like a seasonal that don't have well. And the reason might be due to like Jiraiya, because like I'm doing the needs of Jiraiya as well, like the protection of like the leash might be that much of like a highest priority. Even though Jiraiya definitely might be having like some sort of like a scope to that personal scope to like that like Orochimaru might be totally connected to that Jiraiya's like family, which like might be more. So that at Orochimaru has played a dynastic role. That might be the case definitely like it might be to like settle that for that like Jiraiya might probably want to like bring out Orochimaru. Might be the case like walking the direction. Yet like like Jiraiya might be able to deep down this early even to the feeling grateful to like Sarko because like Sarko being like the boss might have even helped out Jiraiya a lot. Like the past one might be the case. So like definitely Jiraiya might be having that like that that priority of like wanting to like protect like the village as well. Maybe to that movement. It's also like a possibility that for example, I'm totally particularly of like the work safe like then I actually not even see from like the replace, but like I'm just like it might have and eventually like things might have something like Jara ending up in like the replace might have been might have happened. Maybe it might have been after like the battle. But Jara might have lost everything to like the battle against like Orochimaru like the same person which like Jiraiya might have been defeated by Orochimaru and like Jiraiya might have known uh, people that might have been single successful like Jiraiya that like Jiraiya might have eventually uh, ended up that in that Philippe and like Sakabe might have helped Jiraiya with that but might have been in Sakabe might have like as part of some situation might have ended up running into the Jiraiya or something might have happened. So that will like definitely prevent Jiraiya not to be originally from the Philippe but like it might have been more like a scenario where like through Sarkoby's help while Jiraiya might have been in extremely like low point at like Jiraiya's life that like Jiraiya might have eventually ended in like manipulation. Since then I was like Jiraiya might have been feeling grateful and indebted to like Sarkoby as well as like Sarkoby's definitely later but might be the case especially with the Surrender. So definitely and like in like the same path like it might have been when like Jiraiya might have been during like in the phase that like Jiraiya might have learn plus something to it and might have back then might have even straight away wanted to like Jirai back then might have been on like that on during like in a phase and Jirai might have straight away wanted to like simply get stronger and might have wanted to like someone exactly the chief Gamabunta like the strongest of like more than Gamabunta like the chief Gamabunta itself might have been that was Jiraiya might have wanted, and Jiraiya might have most likely even with like Jiraiya not having like this like extra special red chakra like Naruto. Even without that, even though Jiraiya might be only having that like ten like dot, he will only having that just like the base chakra. I don't like still I'm thinking like Jiraiya might have been a gifted individual that like and like that coupled with like Jiraiya's like unique way of like training and like skills like I'm thinking like Jiraiya might have grown up with like single flow chakra alone to the point of like being able to like actually someone like the chief Gamabunta so back then it's like during Jiraiya's younger days might have been like the blue chakra I don't might have been what like happening like just about the thing in the and like Jiraiya might have done this like absolute maximum to take control of like the chief Gamabunta code but like Jiraiya might have only sprayed the chief Gamabunta code back then might have go to be far spiritually stronger that like for like Jiraiya to handle with this like low chakra, like Naruto, but like Naruto has like extra advantages like the extra spiritual right chakra. Might have been the case that in Naruto anyway. So like that way, like I'm different like Jiraiya usually might have given up on that usually like becoming like the master of like the chief government and then like Jiraiya might have decided to like settle for like the second strongest in like the Gamabunta realms might have been like the henchman, like the main command of like the chief Gamabunta and it might have been like a tool that might have been like the second strongest right after like the chief Nintendo that like Jiraiya might have summoned and might have like made that tool just like summoning creature and like that way Jiraiya might have became the master of that second strongest tool in like the Nintendo realm might have been like what might have happened is definitely going to the so like and I'm going to like or find like them and I'm going to like the personality of like the comment of like the chief government or that is like Jiraiya might have someone back then might have been totally different as well. Totally unlike the extreme or confident kind of like nature of like the chief government or like and like the top comment might have had like more of like a mild nature so like I'm different like as well as like that those might have someone who might have totally stayed away, got along well, might have been what kind of happened to the human trainers. So like through Jiraiya's journey of life and just like adventures and the struggles and everything like I'm different like that those might have been played like a huge role in that being that aspect that those persons might have been absolutely present when Jiraiya might have gone through all sorts of like joys and sufferings of Jiraiya's life. And when Jiraiya might have been up in like the legend of everything like all this time like I'm just like that soul something that might have been present alongside and might have been fighting battles alongside Jiraiya might have been the case certainly when so that way whenever like after like summoning that soul like whenever Jiraiya totally like once like the battle is over like I'm thinking that the summoned creature might be going back to its like into its like a reality of that all the summoning so it might be the case because so like whenever like the sword might return back for being like there are summoning creature like it might always like report back to like the chief command that was as to like everything that has happened along its like journey with like Jiraiya and everything. So like this entire time like the chief command that was from like the Gamabunta real might have been learning more and more about like Jiraiya as time passed and like with like that something out of Jiraiya telling more and reporting everything that happened on his like journey like Jiraiya might have been the case that you remember and I will print that they may be that eventually like the moon that out might have eventually gotten his skin first with like the extinct hero of that Jiraiya and Jiraiya I think like or like might have made it to like one of like the legendary ninjas and everything. So definitely like or this like might have probably impressed like the kingdom that out that like the kingdom that out might have been eventually started to like visit that like Jiraiya will like once again attempt to like summon like the kingdom that out and like attempt to like create smart that some of that what might have eventually ended up even deciding that might have been the case in the conspiracy. So like that way, like Jiraiya might be a person that might be that like physique the moment that what might be extremely fond of. Also like about that I'm looking. So this as well might be or this might be the reason for like the moment that what like elected person like totally being concerned about like destroying like the landscape while fighting in like the league might also be the case because like it's exactly like how for Jiraiya like the league might be such as like hope that for like the season that only like who might be only who might only like Jiraiya that it has well only finding like the league as like the first place that that it will destroy might be like the case and definitely like the fact that like the closeness between like Naruto and Jiraiya while Naruto had like first summoned like the season as well that as well might have been a fact in that way, even to the person like the Gamabunta even though he might not show it outside, like he might deep down he might be form of like Naruto as well. Due to like Naruto's not only due to like Naruto's closeness with like Jiraiya, but like maybe like the chief Gamabunta might have been able to like see a lot of Jiraiya during Jiraiya's younger days in Naruto. Might also be the case that we might have but again like the chief Gamabunta might have that as a priority to like have Naruto be grow quickly grow and like mature and get stronger to the point of that and Naruto actually being deserving of that the person of that being like the master of like the chief Gamabunta so like especially for the chief for like chief Gamabunta like it might be of the extreme high priority to like keep testing and pushing Naruto to like to Naruto's limits to like have that way like Naruto grow stronger and strong quickly might be the case especially by the jury and so like these by the Korean culture of like definitely even with like not of himself like understand himself as like the henchman of like the teach from that on like the name like eventually even after like the battle against like Gaara's like Jansen story like even after Gaara will be eventually definitely indicating the killer like the another that but even after that like even in like the future as well like the chief Gamabunta told like even after that like the next time Gamabunta in like Naruto will be summoning like the chief Gamabunta told in like the future as well even at that point I was like the chief Gamabunta told solely due to like Naruto saving like the told son of like the chief coming that all that won't be going easy on like number. I thought even to the future and they still continuing on with its platform putting and testing of like Naruto until Naruto would be grown and maturing enough and getting strong enough to like the point of like being able to like confidently address himself as like the master of like the chief coming in that like that would be what like the chief coming in that like would be necessarily wanting to like, achieve and through Naruto might be like that 20 situation, but so like until Naruto you're reaching that point, I'm at least like see the more Naruto to that feel like pushing Naruto to that the extreme is like the even to the future, like in the Naruto that I'm moving over right now. Like, also the movement frame that's right now, but like the chief the movement Naruto like for having like I think like multiple stuff like I'm going both might be definitely battle stuff. It's definitely my concern. So like definitely now the Korean version right now is that definitely like the chief the previous owner like master of like the chief Gamabunta so might have been like the fourth of that in our startup. That's definitely my concern. Like he might have fought like when he might have fought like he might have been even might have eventually succeeded in like mastering and state become like a master and taking control of like even like the chief Gamabunta. So that definitely not a startup, even though the photocard so might have only, unlike in those like special advantage of like having an extra chakra, like the photocard might have only had like a single blue chakra, and then that yet might have been so that yet he might have been also been a gifted individual having that more than like the normal levels of like those chakras when compared to the others might be the case like one possible that like that coupled with like the that that coupled with like the purpose that even before in becoming like purpose that they might have had like unique ways of like train supplement trains. So like unique methods of like some ways of like train through which like we might have managed to like even further increase that the levels of the like the chakra to like the point of like him being able to like summon like the chief Gamabunta and like using this like unique ways itself like by himself might have even managed to even like take control of that and become like the master of like the system of Mutato as well. Might be the case, especially with him. So like it might be while fighting alongside like the boss of the that like the system of Mutato might have also received all this like battle stuff as well. Might be also the case, especially with him. And back then I'm looking like maybe of like about like Jiraiya being such an absolute fan of like the boss of that day. So what I think for like might be like the so that definitely that way, like after like the Portuguese loss might have been such an absolute shock to like Jiraiya that I'm thinking like still eventually like Jiraiya might have been such an absolute fan of like the Portuguese might have been like it is so like even after like the Portuguese passing like Jiraiya maybe that might have been like the reason for like fundamental difference maybe Jiraiya eventually deciding to like probably learn the summoning jutsu and like use summoning jutsu to like summon that exact like summoning creature that once belong to like the Portuguese, the chiefs, the moving battle, and like Jiraiya exactly like the Portuguese might have only hope of like being able to like be the master and take control of the chiefs, the moving battle, but like might have failed while attempting that might have been what might have happened in like the but it's definitely my personal theory and we are like going to the impressions that that even with like Naruto having to like also like red chakra to even someone like the thief Gamabunta to like tell my impressions that the thief Gamabunta to like even to the person might be totally unaware of like Naruto being like the son, like the fourth brother. Might be also the case also like about the that like imagine the end. So like maybe that's like the possibility that maybe it might be like the connection to like such a possible connection to like the corporate data existing to like the chief Gamabunta code, and maybe that for being even like the reason for like the chief Gamabunta code being so extremely concerned of like now destroying like the landscape of like the league as well. Uh, might be also the case that we another possibility that I am answering. So like the customer will spend, also probability of like a remote possibility of like the chief Gamabunta code like while fighting alongside like for Puka might have been so extremely powerful and might have not even proceeded a single like that might be like the case of lead might be but like it might have been only once like the elections in Pakistan, like my Fox attacks like the league played that it might have been only at that point in that battle against like the United Fox, like the Fox that then along with like the big government that was might have struggled in like the fight against like the United Fox might have been the might have been the case and might have been during then that like the chief government that might have received it's like battle cup from like the attack of like the United Fox might have been also the basis that might have been and that way, like the Nigel Cox might have probably got indicated that the thief from that might have been that happened back then. And like so that the Fokker guy might have straight away called back like the chief from that and like before like sealing like the Nigel Cox or Nigel Cox with on to like Narco might have seen what might have happened back then. Definitely not exactly. So like the chief from that way might have not realized that basically that spirit of that very same Nigel Cox exists within that Naruto and basically also the fact that like Naruto was like the son of like the water guy. Don't these two things like the chief from that way might have totally missed and basically even though the person might be totally unaware of definitely might be very end. So like a continuous mention so depending like in a one like Naruto would be like defeating Gaara like I'm like at that point but two possibilities like I'm still in my difference that like change to like the path of good like Gaara's like action only happening from that point on definitely like to repeat against Naruto definitely I'm saying with you and I'm sitting on this so like that number three totally happening through two positives either like a like the sense with this like of like to that like connected to like Gaara's like definitely maybe solely due to that fact alone that eventually being able to that be in that Gara and like the with like being able to like end up in like good terms with like each other and basically that way like the that with letting go like the function over like Gara like the medium at that point like and that way Gara being able to be that change happening to like Gara and from that point on Gara being able to like see that person exactly from that point on without having like the focus of like the Chicago happening and like the Chicago sensory like taking like totally working as like with that good teamwork with that and coordinating with the Gara and taking orders from Gara in like the batch from that point on to select one possibility that I'm looking or like the other possibility that I'm looking for like maybe like exactly like how in like Naruto's case like even the fact that like even in like the past like Naruto well, had been focused by like the Night Fox uh Night Fox with to a certain extent in like that Naruto I think has in like the past like lately so definitely in a similar manner than this one maybe like because of Dara like in like after like Dara's defeat against like Naruto maybe someone like maybe like or like somebody like literally or like Jiraiya someone like like maybe sitting create onto like Dara which would be like keeping like the Sanskrit contained and preventing like Sanskrit from like processing Dara and that way from that point on, like literally that after like through like interaction with like Naruto, after like Naruto, Gaara's defeat by Naruto, after Naruto defeating Gaara, like that change kept happening to Gaara, Gaara turning was and basically from that point on, like the seal that when that Gaara being able to like control like Chicago like the spirit for like and to use it like a good thing from that point on. So select other possibilities that under the point with like the number very mentioned right now is that basically the activity of like the configuration might be like since like air like all around that basically so definitely to use like the wind attack for like the Chicago spirit like basically for like it to like use like wind attack to like definitely could be like using that all the power of like the wind surrounding it, like it would be using that it's like wind attack against like the Gamabunta goes like water attack with it's like maximum intensity and like the maximum power with the Kudaku can stay out like the wind attack might be how it could be using its second direction might be like that to give this to the main of the range and but compared to that in like the case of like but the case of like the Gamabunta goes like the fact that like basically it's like shooting out of like water attack like to counter like the wind attack like it might be solely out of like the remaining water that that might be contained to the like body. It might have drank a long while back. Might be like the case like which Jack the rope will be using to like counter against like the wind attack. And this might be the sole reason for like the wind attack of like the Sudaku only being able to be counterable alone by like the water attacks of like the wind that boat. Might see like that limit. So like in terms of battle against like Sukaku, comes to the element for instance, eventually resulting in like the Sukaku, instead of resulting in like the chief that or like eventually spotting the huge lake eventually nearby and basically from that huge lake like at that point I'm looking that the Gamabunta had trained like the majority of like the water in that lake and they split them the train to be at that point once like the Gamabunta will be shooting out its like water attack like at that point when I'm looking like the Gamabunta will be able to like shoot out its like water attack so it's like so intensity and so level of power it's like with another that and that I'm referring to be far too much for like and far too for like Chicago using its like wind-based like attack to counter and basically I'm looking it will be with that attack that I'm looking like as the Gamabunta will be like like and succeeding in that it's like what based that attack onto that Chicago onto the sand body of that Chicago and that will be like the point where like Chicago will be getting seriously affected by that whole one and basically from that point on I'm like Chicago seriously like struggling to like totally to follow against like the against like the water phase attacks of like the Gamugun chief Gamugun that would like to select the chief Gamugun that would at that point after like bringing like the that one from like the lake like it's not won't be like stopping will be like particularly in like shooting out like what is that then like that will be thoroughly what I'm still remember to the point like Chicago and bring down Chicago and defeating Chicago selecting the scenario and putting on the own frame. Yes, so that definitely I'm 3% right now is definitely for like Naruto to that mess up like Naruto that transformation goes to and look at that way instead of that Chito Moon that don't like gaining. So the transformation goes to gaining like fans and pro like and like in Naruto's like initial right. So like the transformation goes to right now so for like Naruto probably messing up to like a point of that having like the Chito Moon that taking another totally transformed form which would be like making it even more disadvantageous and difficult for like the chief Gamabunta so against like current battles against like the giant and just like the scenario that I'm going to like the form would be of such a form that would be that in which like it's like the design of like the form would be making it like even more weaker to be able to like perform in like it would be reducing its like the Gamabunta's like performance in like the battle against like the chief against like the giant and just like the scenario that I'm looking and like I'm just like the uh, government that would like being personally enraged and disappointed in like Naruto at that point. And frustrated Naruto like just enough that way like only like Naruto messing up at that point like the government that would like struggling so much and like taking injury ending up taking way more injuries from like the attack repeated attacks of like the giant and that clinical scenario that I'm referring until like I'm referring like probably to himself really bad and guilty to like the point of like that whole situation everything in like and that resulting in that absolute need to like totally uh to perfect that transformation at that point itself like that whole need resulting in like literally not perfecting that has like transformation goes to and like I'm like even way more than that the Gamabunta so should be expecting uh while talking about while telling Naruto that idea about like the of like through the transformation into like the Gamabunta of gaining flaws and fangs like even way more than it the thoughts like expectation like expecting like Naruto's like transformation into like finally ending up being such an absolute success that I'm like the Naruto like in the transformation into transforming like the Chito that goes to like an even more extremely intimidating and like into like the round that showed like saying that even more extremely stronger and cooler that transform form with like way stronger and bigger fans and claws than like even like the round that also be expected is like even the scenario that I'm looking over like and Okay, so like the flame experience right now is that basically with just even like the bare form itself of like the nitrate form itself. This I'm also predicting that would be that electric percent like would be a lot smaller, like the Gamabunta approach, like taking the form of the nitrate box. That form of the nitrate box would be a lot smaller than the actual true the nitrate box, especially when the mentioned that in terms of cycles, that especially when the mentioned. So simply by just like the transformation of that by just taking even like the bare form itself of like the matter form itself from looking like the Gamabunta right now from this point on which is thoroughly usually offering like the Gaara's like the giant transfer is like clinical scenarios that is and at that point I'm looking like not only Satya but like Narco as well would be having that as bit shock of like a realization as to that basically as to that how that it even just like the form of that the nineteen form cause like the movement cartoon who was like struggling against like the reflection to get such an extreme massive power grid then like both Naruto as well as like Sasuke would be at that point shocked at like when thinking about like the actual full strength of that actual original like nineteen of that full extent of its strength that we need. Just even imagining about that would be that feeling extremely scary for like both Naruto as well as like Sasuke at that point. There's like the scenario that I'm going to go with right now. And definitely I'm going to bring that while Naruto like finally trying to like launch out of like transformation to like turn like the Naruto to gain 4.5. At that point of preparing like what might have actually happened might have been that the my type of spirit within like Naruto might have seen that has like an absolute chance to like totally to like trick and manipulate Naruto into like turning. I think that manipulation might have definitely that manipulation and influencing might not have happened at that critical situation of Naruto when Naruto was about to execute that manipulation by like tricking of like the mind of like Naruto might have been what might have definitely happened and might have certainly like the government are told like basically exactly like taking the forms like Naruto giving like the government are told like exactly like the form of like the type of might have happened solely through such a manipulation by like the spirit of the humanity or within Naruto might be that 20 what might have happened is the career. So definitely I'm looking back to the 90s of like this in that time might be totally still ever since like being shielded onto that Naruto by like Fox again like the 90s of since then might have been still to like totally return back to like the real world from his like trapped 100% sealed state within like Naruto might be definitely the case, definitely much very much. So like definitely the Nightingale Fox might have seen like the person situation has like a great opportunity for like the Nightingale Fox who might even at that point will be still trapped within like Naruto could totally have that absolute villanistic kind of like if that from like the perspective of like the Nightingale Fox like might totally want to like in a villanistic manner like it might want to like mess with like not only Naruto but like the entirety of like the Liquidated and stare like the entirety of like the Liquidated like the last time like the Naruto before like getting killed like the Nightingale Fox was like while it was like originally wasn't like outside Naruto it was like going through like the whole spectrum of like the leaf like steering everyone in like the leaf so like that lead to that person to like in a villanistic man to like in a man with like Naruto and like the leaf to like steer them all like in a villanistic man of like the Nightingale Fox might have or the limited like situation as like a chance to do exactly that and might have that way consciously manipulated in a villanistic manner manipulated like that was might into that basically causing that Naruto to like totally Naruto's transformation to like exactly end up that turning like Naruto into making it appear exactly like taking the form exactly of that the night type of might be what might have actually happened certainly might have been real. So like the Lima representation right now is also about like the entirety of like the like ninja soldiers and League Village ninja soldiers like the League Village like I'm right now in 2003 and all like spotting like the giant mantle fox at like a distance and at that point the conference them all will be having like that whole deja vu feeling of like the trauma of that past incident of like the night of like the point like the League Village and then choosing like the even like the possibility and all that. So the game to bring that the League Village ninjas that would be having that shock and that fear that once again triggering within them and like that only resulting in like them prioritizing like the construction of like the United was even more than like focusing on like families or like the sound like in the scenario that I'm looking to happen. Just definitely not the image and that way like I'm putting like without manipulating like an entire a great number of like the village ninjas like would be storming towards like the location where like Naruto would be and would be attempting to like attack like the night rifle. It's also like attack like the Gamabunta thinking that it's like the night rifle. It's also like doing the Naruto that I'm playing. But like I'm looking at that one just like Naruto like totally and I'm referring for that happening most likely by the time that that Gamabunta taking the form of the night rifle to finally succeeding in like defeating Gaara and like that and that was it will be after like the repeat of Zara that and all this will like happen and that way the poor Gamunka told that way taking even more of that injury and damage like the scenario that I'm like by the time Naruto be quickly able to like understand like the situation and basically why like the ninjas are like attacking like the Gamunka told like by the time Naruto will be figuring it out, like the Naruto in like the form of the Kanate box will have taken serious injuries and would be going unconscious like it's scenario to be failing at that point like scenario that I'm on. So like at that point like Naruto will be feeling extremely bad and basically will be feeling guilty and basically Naruto will be like quickly like turning back and at that point I'm looking definitely for like most likely when like the Naruto should be failing like at that point like Naruto transformation will automatically come undone and basically the Naruto like turning back to like a main boss. And at that point is when I'm like believe it is ninjas like at that point possibly realizing that that it was only the transformation as like the also like single scenario that I'm literally playing and I'm literally able. And I'm also protecting like eventually once like the battle in war like the replays and everything will be over like I'm preparing that need for like eventually for like Naruto to once again use like summoning to like summon like the chief Gamunta so itself to like to give a proper apology to like the chief Gamunta for like Naruto transforming like the chief Gamunta to like exactly take the form of the type of would be along the lines of the like Naruto will be attempting and summoning like the chief Gamunta like and Naruto we don't expect like the chief Gamunta to like probably accept Naruto's apology but we come to the point at the moment like the chief Gamunta like comes Naruto will be summoning like the chief Gamunta like that when said something that thought like straight away like only then in race manner to be like taking Naruto and like to be like causing that in a more serious manner will be causing like would be attacking Naruto at that point it's like scenario that other and like Naruto will be like repeatedly saying that the apology and sorry to like the people Naruto until like the entrance like and for certain like the Naruto would be finally coming out just like in the scenario that I'm looking at and I'm